Welcome back to Everyday Adventures in Cooking with Rick. This episode is part of our Sunday dinner series, our Sunday meal. So in our previous episode, we made homemade sauce and meatballs. And now we're going to make fresh homemade pasta to go with that, because that sauce deserves the best pasta. So you can buy boxed pasta, and believe me, growing up, most Sundays we had pasta out of a box. My mother had 6 kids. My grandmother, they were too busy to do that every week. But on special Sundays, on special occasions, we would have homemade pasta, and it was a real treat. So we're going to start putting that together. It's actually really easy to make. Don't be intimidated. It's really not that hard. Now me, I'm going to let you know, I am a flour snob. I like certain flours in my pasta. I use a combination of flours. I do half, it's called dopo zero or double zero fine ground flour. It has more protein and it's a finer grind. And I use half durum wheat semolina flour. It's a very coarse flour. I think it gives the pasta a real good texture, a good bite. And then it's some eggs, some salt, and some olive oil, and really that's all it is. So we're going to start putting this together. Now you're going to see on a lot of the old the cooking shows where the Italian grandmother makes the pasta and she puts the flour on the board and makes a well, and somehow it doesn't make a mess. I can't do that. If I do it, the flour's everywhere. So I like to make it in a bowl, kind of contains it. My wife appreciates that there's not flour all over the place. So we're going to make 1 cup of the double zero flour and 1 cup of the semolina flour. So now to this we're going to add about 2 teaspoons of salt. We're going to mix that together. Get those 3 things kind of put together. Into that we're going to add 3 eggs. Now these are large eggs. So what happens with this is it's not an exact science. Flour will absorb moisture differently. The eggs are a little bit different size. So it's 3 eggs, but you may need to add a little more water later on if the dough is a little dry, because the all the ingredients, like I say, the flour might absorb moisture differently, and the eggs might be a little bit different size. To this we're also going to add about a tablespoon of olive oil. That may be a little bit more, that's okay. And we're going to start mixing this together with a fork. Just mix our eggs in the middle. And then little by little we're going to get the flour incorporated in to the mix. So imagine this on the board, there would be flour everywhere. You'd be making a mess. So, kudos to those people that can do it that way. I can't. And you can see it's starting to form together into a ball, into the dough. Whoop, I already made a mess there. So now what I'm going to do is we're getting to the point now where I'm going to have to get my hands in there. So I'm going to clean that off. What I am going to do to be ready, I'm going to put a little bit of water in here just in case I need it. Don't look at the messy sink. Right now, it's time to get our hands in there and start putting this together. Start working all that flour into the dough. And like I say, you may or may not need more water. You'll know as this goes. It's still kind of sticky. It's still grabbing the flour. Now when you're doing this, it's going to feel kind of coarse, kind of dry. And as we knead this dough, it's going to completely change texture and consistency. Become really smooth. I'm going to add just a drop. And you don't want to add a lot because a little bit of water goes a long way in this. If any of you have mixed cement, I can't believe I'm using a cement analogy, but it's the same thing. It goes 1 drop difference can make the difference between too soupy. But you can see now the bowl is cleaned off. We've got our dough. And there it is. So now what we're going to do, transfer this to the board. We're going to add just a little bit of flour to the board so it doesn't stick. And now comes the workout. This is where we're just going to knead the dough, probably for about 5 minutes, to get this dough to be really soft, that we can roll it out. And you can see I'm just turning it around with the heel of my hand, mixing it in. Right now it's got a little bit of a coarse texture to it. It almost feels like little grains of sand almost. But the more I mix it, I can already see the difference. You'll start to see the dough gets almost a little shiny on the outside. And don't worry about the noises in the background. And if it starts to get sticky where it's sticking to the board, just throw a little more flour on the board. You just don't want to make it too dry. You really want it to come together. And you're going to do this for about 5 minutes. And once it's done, you're going to put it together into a nice ball. And you're going to let this rest for at least a half an hour or so, because you've really beat up that gluten in there. Now, what we're kind of concentrating on here too is I'm starting to realize how much we waste plastic and single-use plastic. And then I used to just take a piece of saran wrap or cling wrap and wrap this up, and there's really no need for that. You can grab, last night's Chinese food container or a piece of some Tupperware, throw it in there, put the cover on it, and then you can reuse this over and over again. And we're going to let this sit now for about a half an hour before we roll this out. So we're back, and our pasta dough has been resting for about a half an hour. And you can see, here it is. Beautiful, great consistency. What we're going to do now is we're going to cut off about a third of this. Put the rest, we want to cover it so it doesn't dry out. And we're going to roll this out. Now what we're going to do, you can make any kind of pasta you want out of this. You could make pappardelle, a fettuccine, spaghetti, make small pieces. Obviously the old way is they would have rolled it out by hand and cut it with a knife. And I'm sure that's the way that my great-grandmother would have done it, as they didn't have any machines to do it. So we put a little flour on there so our dough doesn't stick. Any rolling pin. And you can see now that it's been resting how nice and easy it rolls out. And personal preference, how thick or how thin you like your pasta. Keep turning. If it's sticking to the board, just add more flour. That's okay. And you can just keep rolling this to get it as thin or as thick as you want. It's another workout too. You don't have to join the gym. Just make pasta, would knead the dough and roll it out. It's getting thinner. Beautiful. Once you get it to the thickness that you like, sorry about that. I'm going to throw a little more flour on the board because you don't want these to stick together. Now once you get it to that thickness, you can do it as simple as just cut with a knife. And you've got fettuccine, or you can go thicker and do more like a pappardelle. That's up to you. They're not all the same. Nothing wrong with that. And there it is. Homemade pasta. Now you can throw this right in the water, cook it immediately, or you can leave it out to dry and have it the next day, or whenever you're ready to eat. Now, that's not the way that my mother used to do it, and I'll show you the way she used to do it. Okay, so now we saw how you roll the dough out by hand. This time we're going to use this machine, very common pasta making machine. This is what my mother used and my grandmother used. This was actually a wedding present from my grandmother to us. A little hint to my wife, and make sure you make homemade pasta for me. And as you can see, that worked out well. We have homemade pasta a lot, it's just me making it, which is okay. So we're going to cut another chunk of dough off of here. we're going to start to roll this out like we did the other one, because we have to get it flat enough to get into the machine. We can't just throw it right in the machine. So put some flour on our surface, and we just have to get this flat enough to start in the machine. And this machine is still available today. They haven't changed it at all. At I know Italian stores, Italian markets, and specialty cooking stores have this, and it hasn't changed at all. So once you get your dough flat enough to get into the machine has two sides: the side to roll the dough out and the side to cut your pasta. It has number settings on the first wheel. We're going to set this to number 1, which is the widest setting, to start our dough. And you want the dough to have just enough flour on it so it doesn't stick in the machine. We're going to set that right in there. And just pull through. And that. So normally on the first setting, I like to go through 2 or 3 times. The dough has a little bit of memory to it, just to get it started. Then you're going to keep moving it down in number, or up in number. This is number 2. And each one gets a little thinner. And then again, it's up to you, your preference on what thickness you like your pasta. I think this one goes up to 7. It has 7 settings on it. And once you get it the way you like it, my table's moving around. If you can set it on to something that doesn't move so much, obviously that's better. But because of our TV filming, we had to get this in the right spot so you could see it. Just going to keep bringing this through. And if you have 2 people, when we were kids, that was our job. We would help do this and hold one end of the pasta as it was coming out. Right now I'm on number 6. We'll go to number 7 and make a nice thing. And you'll see, if the dough starts to go off, you can kind of direct it. And once you get it started, this is the part that gets tough with one person, but we'll make it work. All right, I was saying how it's a lot easier with 2 people. Well, we have our production assistant Danielle is here with me to help me hold on to the pasta. It's getting too long for me to do this by myself. And as it goes through, you can see how long this is getting. We're going to run this through one more time. All right, Danielle, I'm going to hold it on. I'm going to have you crank that handle.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. And you can see how much easier this is with 2 people. Go ahead. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you, now we're going to switch a little bit. I'm going to have you grab this dough and hold it up, and I'll start cranking. Look at that. You can see her hand through the dough, which is beautiful. And don't worry if it folds over a little. Everything will be good. Now, I saw on one of the food shows once they had a competition who could roll out the dough the longest. Now look at that. Beautiful. So we're going to bring that over here to our board. We're going to lay it across the board like this, if we can. Beautiful. And then all you're going to do is you're going to cut it into, about 12-inch, 10 to 12-inch sections. Because we're going to be making fettuccine out of this. So we're going to go with about 10 to 12 inch. Doesn't have to be perfect. Alright, beautiful. So now that we have this, one of the things we want to do now is a little more flour on there, because as you roll out the pasta, we don't want it to stick together. So a little more flour on there would be good. We are now going to make some fettuccine. So now we're going to move our handle to the other side. That's the spaghetti one. This one will make spaghetti or fettuccine. Or this one may actually be linguine. Now I'm going to run off the camera for a second. I also have this pasta drying rack, which works out really well for when you're done cutting the pasta to hang it to dry. You know what, we'll put that over here for now. And I did learn another little trick. that I'll show you in a second. So now you're going to take your dough. You're going to put it into the fettuccine side. And just, now that you have some flour on there, it'll go nicely over there. It comes out. I don't know if the camera can see this or not, but on the other side, we have fettuccine. And what we're going to do is we're going to put this onto our drying rack, because we're not ready to eat right now. And then we're going to let that dry. Or you could cook it immediately, but we're not ready to eat yet. And obviously, chances are you're not going to be making the pasta right before dinner to get everybody coming over. You got a lot going on. You're going to make this ahead of time a little bit, and you are going to hang it out to dry like that. So now another thing is we have these pieces. Sometimes when you roll them out, the pieces become, after you cut them, they become wider than the opening, and it's hard to get them in there. On TV, when you watch, you know, Ann Burrell and all these professional chefs, it always seems to work out perfect. That doesn't happen. So what I like to do is just cut a little angled piece off of each side, just a little bit. It makes it a lot easier to get that dough started. So like that. And again, more fettuccine that we're going to hang up to dry. Now I'm going to show you the last way, which is now the easiest way, the way I roll out the dough. Okay, so now the final way, this is the way I do the pasta dough now, as technology gets better, we're able to do this. And I use my stand mixer to roll out the dough. I bought the attachments for the stand mixer, and it's basically the exact same thing as the hand machine, but with a motor now, with electricity. And one thing it does allow you to do is you can do it by yourself now, because the machine is turning the handle. You don't have to turn the handle by hand, but you still have to get the dough, you know, started a little bit flat to get it through the machine. And they make attachments. So they have one attachment for the mixer that is the roller to flatten out the dough, and then different attachments for different width pasta. I also have another attachment to make ravioli, which is kind of cool. We'll do a show just on ravioli. So this goes right into the mixer. So anyway, I'm putting the KitchenAid attachment on here. Like I said, this one is the roller for flattening out the dough. There are a lot of attachments for the KitchenAid mixer that I have. A food grinder, you can grind your own meats. Sausage stuffer, I've made my own sausage. And when I make my tomatoes, I actually use the attachment on here to strain the seeds and the skins off of the tomatoes. It makes your job a lot easier. So this machine is not a big investment, and it really helps you out in the kitchen. So anyway, we've got our dough flattened out. We got this on here again. We're going to put this on number 1, the same as the other machine. Make sure we lock down the head on the KitchenAid. Put it on low speed for now. And now again, you've got both hands free to work with the dough, as opposed to having to crank with one hand. So unfortunately right now I don't need our assistant Danielle. She was wonderful. She helped out in the last one. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to slowly work our way up to get to the thickness that we want. It's really, you know, when they hear that you make your own dough, they think it's some incredible thing. Really not that complicated. But the texture and the taste and the way the pasta holds the sauce, I think, is so much better with homemade pasta than it is with boxed pasta. I think it's worth the work, at least on special occasions, like we used to have it. I think it's worth every bit of the work that you put into it. Now for this, I think we're going to go up to a number 6. The thicknesses on the two machines aren't exactly, it seems like, the same. Consistency-wise, yeah, so that looks like about the same. This is number 6 on this machine. I'm starting to see my hand through the dough. Anyway, beautiful. And once we get that through, I'll lay this out. Now we're just going to switch attachments. Really simple to do. We're going to put our fettuccine cutter on there. Tighten that up. And the same thing, we're going to cut this into our lengths. You know, I'm not overly concerned on having all the lengths exactly the same. Get 3 pieces out of there. Same thing, turn on our machine. Comes through. I forgot my spoon, so we're going to do it the old way. And there we go. We've got our fresh fettuccine. We're going to put that over here to dry. Do the rest of our dough. Now, if one of my assistants could hand me, I love saying that, one of my assistants. Sounds so professional. The pan that is on the table. So when you have a big crowd coming over and you've got a lot to do, you don't have to do this when everybody's coming. I made this last night, and it's, you know, semi-dry, and this is something you can do the day before, so that you don't have to be stressed out doing this as everybody's here. And you'll have your, it's still, once you put it in the water, it's just like you did if you put it in fresh. Still much better than in a box, so you can do this anytime. Okay, so now we've made our homemade pasta. This is the best part. We're going to try some. You got to make sure it's good. So we've got some water boiling here. Remember to always salt your water. Put a little salt in there. And again, this is just a little test to make sure everything went okay. We're going to grab some of our pasta that we made. Put that right in the water. Fresh pasta takes a lot less time to cook than a boxed pasta, obviously, because it's completely dry. And our boxed pasta is only made with flour and water. And that's another big difference here. This is made with eggs, that's why it has a totally different texture and different consistency. And because it's homemade, it's not quite as smooth, which helps to hold the sauce better. So this will only take a couple of minutes to cook. And honestly, I like my pasta on the hard side, al dente. I think most people, that's the way they like it. Plus I rolled it out thin, so it's not going to take much time at all to cook. For me, it's cooked long enough. So we're going to try some of this now. Heat off. Okay. Fantastic. We're going to get a little bit of sauce. That's been cooking now for quite a few hours. Put that right on top. I bet you guys wish you were here, because this smells fantastic. We're going to put a little bit of cheese on the top. Oh boy, this is good. Grab a fork. Uh-oh. Excuse me for eating on the air. Oh, that is fantastic. We are now one step closer to having that Sunday meal. Again, I hope you really try this homemade pasta at home. Easy to do, the results are fantastic, and mixed with the homemade sauce is unbelievable. So stay tuned for more episodes. We're going to do more to finish up this meal. I hope you will like us, leave some comments, tell us your favorite food memories, your favorite recipes, share us with your friends. I hope you've enjoyed this. I've enjoyed being with you, and I look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Ciao.